What is up, everyone? I am Joe DeHoyos. I'm host of Beyond the Woodline. Before we get started today, I always like to tell you guys if you guys have any strange encounters, whether it be cryptid, paranormal, UFOs, aliens, or anything else you think this might be a little too weird for the regular world that we live in, man, hit me up, shoot me an email. I'm easy to find on Facebook, on YouTube. I'm on Instagram, TikTok. Well, my email address is beyond.woodline@gmail.com. And like I said, you can find me on Facebook, Joe DeHoyos. That's my name. And um, yeah, I'm make myself pretty available. Um, if you guys are interested in joining a Bigfoot team, I'm part of the Jevning Research Group. I'm his executive director. I'm kind of Will's right hand man. Man, he's a great guy. If you don't know him, if you ever listen to his podcast, which is Creek Devil, check him out, man. But with all that being said, I've got another great guest. Uh, Jeremiah Byron from Bigfoot Society. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Joe, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here on your show. We've been trying to set this up for a while, so I'm glad to be here, man.
Yeah, man, I was glad we were able to talk a little bit too before the show. That's always nice to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I actually found you on TikTok. I didn't even realize we were friends on Facebook. You know, it's
Oh,
funny, right?
TikTok is weird, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I found you on TikTok, then I found you on Instagram. So I said, I'm just gonna message the guy. And then as I'm going through and we're communicating, you started popping up all over my Facebook, and I'm like, oh shit,
Okay.
we're friends.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that was funny, man. But yeah, why don't you tell us real quick about your podcast, Bigfoot
Yeah,
Society?
definitely. So, Bigfoot Society is an interview-based podcast. So I'm interviewing people. It's to do with cryptozoology. I'm transitioning over to primarily it's about Bigfoot. I would say 95% Bigfoot stuff, but there's other cryptid stuff in there as well sometimes. So I'll do interviews with people in the field, researchers, authors. Something I've gotten into recently doing in the last few weeks, and my audience really loves it. Is I am getting people to actually come on and share their encounters, and I'm interviewing them about that. So like I've talked to a lady who had an interesting encounter in Montana in the Tobacco Root Mountains, where she was paced by a Bigfoot that was going um, down the side of the mountain, as her and her son were bow hunting elk, and that was a really fun interview that just released on Monday. Um, Bigfoot Society has presence pretty much everywhere. Yeah, as you said, TikTok got about 80 some odd thousand people hanging out with me over there, but Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. But I just like talking to people about Bigfoot, trying to figure out what's behind this mystery, one of the last big mysteries of our world. I will be hanging out with uh, Seth Breedlove has invited me to be a part of Monster Fest. So in June, if you're going to be at Monster Fest in Canton, Ohio, I'll be doing Bigfoot Society live. But yeah, I just like making connections, helping people get connections in the Bigfoot community, and just talking to people, trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. So what actually got you involved in this? I mean, what piqued your
Yeah.
interest?
Yeah, good question. So it goes back a while, Joe. So I'm going to start way back. So it started out first with as a little kid, my dad was he would watch stuff like In Search of reruns with Nimoy and stuff like that. So it's that story. And what's the other one with Robert Stack? Unsolved Mysteries,
Unsolved
right?
mysteries.
So
Yeah.
I got freaked out as a little kid with all that stuff. Then during high school, I was like, I'm out of here. And then, but in my mid 20s, I started working at Apple, and I met a few guys that were into weird stuff too. We started, this is in central Iowa. So we started talking about like, oh, there's weird stuff in Iowa. And we figured out there's a cryptid that's 20 minutes away from where we worked, and they had a festival. And then my buddy Andrew he started working with Seth Breedlove, and so Seth was filming a it was the documentary Terror in the Skies,
Okay.
which is a few years ago. It's about Thunderbirds and such. And so Andrew was filming the interviews with people like Chad Lewis, people like that. And if you're familiar with the Van Meter Visitor, he's the author of the main book. Um, and so I was the guy. He was like, "You should come around and watch me do these interviews. It'll be fun. You'll like it because you like STM." And when I was there, he's like, "Hey, I actually need you to come up with questions off the top of your head and be off camera so that I can get these guys to say the right stuff for, um, for the documentary, right?" So I was like, "Oh, okay. I've never done anything like this. Hey, Alan, good to see you, man." Um, so I just like at the top of my head, I was like, "Oh man, I gotta get these questions." And like halfway through it, I realized, man, I really love doing this. I'd never been in a situation where I'd been able to interview people or had to interview people. I was like, I love this. Around the same time, I realized, man, I could I could start a podcast myself. I'd started listening to, people back in the day like Shannon and um, some other people like that. And I was like, man, I could take a swing at this myself, right? So I started and man, I started February 2019 and it's been a long road since then. So I've gone from, talking to my buddies to talking to people like Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Cliff Barrickman, um, those who have had encounters in the field. It's just been a fun ride, man. So that's pretty much how Bigfoot Society came about, is randomly being involved with a STM documentary, getting the love for interviewing people about weird stuff, Bigfoot. And we can talk about this later if you want, but it's actually started to turn into I'm not just podcasting, but um, I am now researching as well. And as a podcaster, that that line is very thin where if you're interviewing people, but then you start to research it, you just can't help but do it, right? And so we can talk about that too, but I've started to get into some interesting things around Iowa because of that. So,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. Um, excuse my ignorance, but
yeah.
Iowa doesn't seem like a state that would be Bigfoot. Even though I have heard encounters, are there other cryptids or just Bigfoot that you're really interested in
So,
Iowa?
yeah, there's moving, so I didn't grow up here. Moving into the state from the East Coast, I thought the same thing, and I was like, "There's nothing weird out here." So the thing is like there's a few weird things going on out here, Joe. So, uh, and if you're into Bigfoot history, I would really recommend that viewers uh, pick up the book by David Weatherly. His Iowa cryptid book is probably um, the best history of Bigfoot in Iowa. It's crazy. But there's a lot of different Bigfoot things that have happened over the years. The in the 70s, of course, as in most states, there was a ton of Bigfoot sightings. And actually, there was a thing called the Iowa Bigfoot Information Center, and this started popping up in different places that I would read, different newspaper articles, and it was in David Weatherly's book, and I was like, "This is weird. It's saying that there's this center in Des Moines, but I've never seen this. What's going on?" So that started me on this whole like crazy rabbit hole research for 3, 4 months, and I was like digging up newspaper articles and looking into different Bigfoot sightings around the state, like the Lockridge Monster in Lockridge, Iowa, which is in the eastern part of the state. And it's about there was this monkey type figure in the 70s, and it was like breaking into different farms, pretty much tearing apart the turkeys and all the different animals, but just leaving them there, not eating them. But people actually saw this figure. It had a face like a monkey. And the Bigfoot was seen in different parts around the state. Now, there's some hoaxing that went on as well, but The crazy thing is that I actually tracked down one of the guys who was originally with the Iowa Bigfoot Information Center. He's in his 70s now, and he hadn't done Bigfoot for years, for 35 years. And I tracked him down where he is, and I called him up, and he called me back. And he's like, okay, who are you? And how do you know that I was into Bigfoot in the late 70s? Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, hey, it's all public record, dude. You just got to know where to look. So I was talking to this gentleman. His name's Kevin Cook. That's public record because it's in the old Des Moines Register articles. He told me some wild stuff, man. Some crazy stuff. I mean, there was one encounter where the Bigfoot were near this property, and the lady of the house was calling up the sheriffs, and the Bigfoot was so loud that the sheriff could hear the Bigfoot over the phone in the
Wow.
70s making a racket. It's wild stuff. So, long story short, and if you want to hear the whole story about the Iowa Bigfoot Center, you can check out episode 150 of Bigfoot Society, which is my presentation at the Van Meter Visitor Festival about it. But the cool thing is that, okay, on the one hand, there was no center that was actually built because these guys were raising money for it. They ran out of money, and it fell apart. But the cool thing is that they had this Bigfoot statue that they would carry around in a truck to the Iowa State Fair, out to Michigan, stuff like that. And it's been lost until this year. They found it in the dude's house in Arkansas. And the cool thing is that if you're familiar with David Becerra from Expedition Bigfoot Museum down in Georgia, he actually bought the statue. Now, you hear statue and you're like, okay, that's kind of weird. Now, it's a full-size taxidermy sculpture with hair. It was made by the gentleman who made the African elephant in the Museum of Museum of History in the Smithsonian. So this is a Smithsonian sculptor. He made a Bigfoot taxidermy sculpture, and now David Becerra owns this. And I talked to him about this a few episodes back in Bigfoot Society, but Mr. Becerra is actually going to go ahead and his plan is to make a new museum, which he's thinking around somewhere in Tennessee, and he's going to put the statue sculpture in that museum because he's already got one in his Georgia museum. So that's just one of the things that I've gotten into, Joe. There's so many rabbit holes. Once you become the guy in your area that's into weird stuff, the stuff finds you, if you know what I'm saying. I have people hitting me up on Facebook all the time. Hey, back in the 70s, me and my buddies were investigating this aquatic cryptid in Makokata, Iowa. Do you want to hear about it? I'm like, yeah, I totally do. Or just, a guy calls me up on Facebook and he's like, hey, have you ever heard of dogmen in Northwest Iowa? No. And he's like, well, I saw one a few years back and everyone sees them out here. So now I'm like, do we have a Beast of Bray Road situation going on in Northwest Iowa? And so I've got him coming on eventually to talk about it, but there's another mystery there as well. So yeah, once you get into the weird stuff, it finds you out, Joe.
Yeah, and man, you're not lying about that. I think I've gotten more contacts from like private people, like family and friends, rather
Oh
than
yeah.
people out in the public that I don't really know. Yeah, family and friends have actually, contacted me and told me, hey, I saw this, or this happened to me one time. What do you think about it? And I'm talking everything from Bigfoot, paranormal, UFO. So yeah, it's fun being the weird guy.
It really is. I love the setup you have here. Do you mind if I shout out a few of my listeners here?
Oh man, go ahead, go ahead.
All right. So we got I can see I've got the Bigfoot Society YouTube linked up as well. We got Patrick McFarland. He's a buddy from Iowa as well. He's got some crazy stuff going on. We got I think a mutual friend. Do you know Mike Casey, Joe?
I think so. His name
He's a
sounds very
cool
familiar.
dude. You should get to know him. He's a great Bigfooter guy from the Pacific Northwest currently. Um, oh, we got all sorts of fun stuff. Okay, so back at it again.
Well, good man. Hey, I appreciate everyone coming along and enjoying the show. Hope you're enjoying the show, and thanks for coming along for the ride. I hope it's a good ride for you guys. but uh, but yeah, what kind of terrain is that where the Dogman was seen in Iowa?
So I'll be honest, Joe. That is a in progress investigation where I haven't gotten the details yet.
Okay.
Um, I will tell you that from what I know of the area, it is it's pretty flat. Yeah. So
Okay.
the thing about Iowa is northern part of the state, it's pretty much flat, right? Down the south though, southeast, it gets pretty wild. That's where it becomes pretty hilly and all sorts of stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, I am
Hmm.
so Joe, do you mind if I ask you a question real quick?
No, go ahead, man.
So let me know. I would be curious to know how you um, got involved with all the Bigfoot stuff because I know um, you're Bigfooting down in Texas, but I am really curious how you got involved with that.
Well, this all interests me since I was like a little kid. I mean, I was like, I don't know, 7, 8 years old. I had a neighbor. He always talked about Bigfoot, paranormal, UFOs, aliens. He had so many stories. And you're talking about the late 70s, early 80s. Where he got this information, I don't know. But that's what started me off. And of course, like you, in search of unsolved mysteries, you know, watching those programs. Then even as I got older and I started cutting grass, that's what I would do with the money. I would go buy books on anything I could find, and a lot of those books at that time they had everything in one book. Bigfoot, UFO. Then we had like spontaneous human combustion. They had all that stuff all in one book. But then after high school, went to college, got married, had kids. Everything got put on the back burner. But then once my kids got old enough and the Bigfoot show started coming out again, um, I started doing, research, and that was like 2012, 2013. So, and like I said, I've been primarily doing research in the San Luis Forest, but I've done gone back to David Crockett, out in Louisiana, out in East Texas, and up in Northern Texas. So, and even in Central Texas, and that's why I asked you about Dogman, because in Central Texas, it's very hilly. It's actually called the Hill Country. Um, it's very rough and rugged terrain, and but Dogman is seen in that type of environment all the time, actually. So that's why I asked you about that. And so I'm not surprised. And that's Big Dog. I don't know if you know Big Dog.
Oh, Mendoza.
Yeah,
All right. All
but
right. Good to see
yeah,
you, man. Oh, we got my buddy Tate Hieronymus in the chat too. He's grabbing his PBRs, so you know what that means. But Tate is actually the guy who got me into going out into the field and actually looking for Bigfoot in Iowa. So
So
hats off
I
to
know you don't
him.
want to talk about your exact locations, but
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to talk about? I mean, like I go to San Luis Forest. That's about all I'm going to say. I mean, do you want to talk about the area, or even just about what you experienced or out there in that area?
I would love to. Um, so Tate brought me out to a certain area in Iowa. Is I thought that we were going, and I was a little bit skeptical at first. I was like, man, I, I just don't think Iowa has the type of stuff where Bigfoot would be going into. And we get to the entrance to the area, and then we had to drive a good 20 minutes in. And I was like, this is nuts. I feel like I'm back in the hills in the mountains of New England. It was crazy. So we get way, way back there in a remote campsite. And Joe, it's hot. Um, It is just, I believe the heat index that Saturday we went out was 110. It was
Oh wow.
super, super hot. So I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen here. Um, the first night, the first day, it's getting a little bit around dusk, and Tate is in his truck. He's taking a nap, and I'm new to it, so I'm like, "What? Why are you taking a nap?" And he's like, "Well, if we're gonna go out bigfooting, you need to be rested up." I was like, "Okay, I got some stuff to learn." The first day, so I'm sitting alone by the campfire. He's in his truck napping, and I was like, I thought I heard a knock, but I wasn't sure. Talked to Tate later, and we were like, that could have been wind. Yeah, because when I was getting into it, I was a little bit Bigfoot on the brain, right?
Mm, right.
So I had my tent up. I'm in the tent, and then Tate's in his truck. That was a wild night. We almost had a tornado come through the campsite. It was wild. And if you want to see like this, you can actually see this, what I'm talking about. If you go to Tate Hieronymus's YouTube channel, he does a YouTube documentary series called Sasquatch: A Search for Sabe. Uh, and then there's an Iowa episode. You can watch that, right? So the first night was kind of just hanging out, chilling out, trying not to die because there's 110 heat index, trying to slam water. The next day, though, it goes down 30, 40 degrees. It gets a lot cooler. And that's when stuff starts to get a little crazy. So we're sitting around the campfire, and all of a sudden, about 30 feet in front of us out in the woods, this tree gets pushed over, and it's loud. And I'm like, I had no idea what was going on. I was like, "Was that a firework?" And Tate was like, "Dude, there's no fireworks out here. We're so far out in the woods. There's no fireworks out here. There's a tree that just randomly got pushed over. There's no wind." Of course, we did not get it on tape because we didn't have the tape rolling. After that, I was like, the tape, my audio recorder is on the whole entire weekend. So we're chatting some more. Tate is doing wood knocks. And then we hear the wood knock to our right, clear as day. And we're like, oh my goodness, this is wild. We thought we were going to have to go outside of the campsite, but the stuff is starting to happen all
Right.
around us. So we go to bed that night. I have my recorder on a picnic table about 30 feet outside the camp. And so over the next few weeks, I'm going over the audio. And one, I learned it takes a long time to go through audio. It took me weeks to do it because I wasn't used to it.
Mhm.
Uh, but I heard multiple tree knocks that night. And the weird thing was, Joe, around 3:45 a.m. Now, mind you, I'm in my tent by myself. Tate is in his truck. 3:45 a.m. we hear, or I hear in the audio, the tent fly getting unzipped. And I'm like, I didn't leave to
Oh
go
wow.
to the facilities at 3:45 a.m.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm freaking out. Like that messed with me for a few weeks because I'm like, what happened? Was someone trying to get into my tent? Was there, we know there were knocks going on. We know there was something pushed over outside the camp. Was but then I was like, Bigfoot don't mess with tent zippers.
Right.
But the crazy thing is that I talked to randomly two people within a few weeks of that through Bigfoot Society, where they told me stories of how a Bigfoot had unzipped a food container in their cabin, but also another one had messed with a tent zipper that a young lady was sleeping in her tent. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how close did we get? So you can kind of see how we keep that area under wraps so that it doesn't get, a ton of people trying to go out there and check things out.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, we're the same way. We don't, tell many people about the actual area. We don't even try to give them hints. We've taken a few people out there, but people that we're very comfortable with and the people that we trust. Yeah. But what was funny about you talking about the audio, right? I have hours and hours of audio that I haven't even listened to. And right when COVID hit, everything was shutting down. Uh, my friend Shane called me up. It's like, hey, you remember when we went camping like 2 years prior? I'm like, yeah, because we went out to another location called Fort Notch Road,
Hmm.
and I'm like, yeah, I remember we went out there. He goes, he said, is this from your recorder? And he sent me over a file, and like a lot of the recording files, they have the name brand recorder or something similar to that. And I was like, yeah, 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 that was on my recorder. He said, well, listen to it. He told me how far to go, and you can hear footsteps in our campsite. Because what I
Really?
did was I had got some of the chem lights, the kind you snap and you shake it up and they glow.
Yep.
And I stuck them around not just in certain areas, but in the middle of our camp. And you could hear footsteps in our camp. I mean, clearly 2 feet. And I go armed, here in Texas because we got hogs
Sure.
and bobcat and
Oh
coyote.
yeah.
Uh, so you know, for anyone to walk into our campsite, that's crazy. You know, and so yeah, that was really that was really cool. And it just reminded me when you talked about that about you got hours of tape. Yeah,
Oh, for
I
sure.
still have so much I haven't even listened to yet. Um,
Oh man, really? Oh, that would drive me nuts. I'd be like, I have to listen to this weekend. I could
yeah,
have I could have the next Sierra sounds on there, you know?
you're right. But
You never
I've
know.
got there was we went to this site and here goes tape. We went to this one site and man, we were hearing wood knocks all night long, and it was just so crazy. But I got like three of them on my recorder that were like back to back to back, and you could tell they were like spread out like in distance. Like there was one really close, then one further away, and a third one even further away. That was pretty cool that we got those three.
That's rocking, dude.
Yeah, but that was in the same as the forest. Like I said, that's where I do most of our research. But yeah. So like, what are some of your favorite stories from encounters, whether they're public or just something that you were told?
Let's see. I'm trying so here's the thing, Joe. I literally am thinking through my mind really quick to think what is public and what is private. Let me think. Uh so here's a fun one. So a lot of people hit me up on Facebook, Joe, and they I have a lot of conversations that unfortunately never end up into they never turn into Bigfoot Society interviews because the person's not comfortable with
Right.
coming on. Right, which is that's fine, that's understandable, but there's a gentleman, which I can't share names or anything. I have to be really careful. Um, but he told me the wildest thing. So he was telling me how oral tradition from his grandparents, they would tell, and he would, well, so first he would go to this area in Iowa to visit his grandparents, and wild stuff would happen around the house, like rocks would be thrown, stuff like that. The crazy thing is that he was telling me that his grandma would always tell him stories growing up that since the 1940s in this area in Iowa, there was a group of some kind of hairy monkey people called Yehudis,
Mm.
which is got to be a regional term for Bigfoot.
Yeah. Right.
That's really cool. I loved hearing that story because one, that's not in any book. Two, even in Weatherly's book, there's no uh, there's no accounts of Bigfoot in the 1940s in Iowa. So that was pretty special. This guy was amazing. He had stories. He was like, "Well, I moved out to Washington State and they built a house out there and this is like way out in the boonies." And he was telling me how they actually got ran off the property because nightly something was climbing up on their roof and jumping up and down onto the roof, and
Oh,
they were hearing things howling around the house, and they got ran off the land
mm,
because the guy had young kids during that time, and he was like, "I don't want anything to happen to my kids. I'm out of here," and he came back to Iowa. That's a weird thing that I've heard in my DMs. Yeah. One thing that I'm starting to get, let's see, what would be another one I could tell you? Um, hmm, have to think
Patrick
for it.
says the news article I sent you.
Oh yeah. Patrick has some interesting stories. One of them is uh the one that comes to mind is um actually, Pat, can I share the story about the gravel pit? Let me know in the chat if I can do that. Um yeah.
I'm drinking Blue
I don't
Moon.
wanna share something by I'm pretty sure it's public. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I was, you told me that story. For whatever reason, it reminded me of a crazy story too. Uh, about I don't know 3 4 years ago, maybe even five. My sister called me up. She goes, "Hey, you need to look at Becky's post on Facebook." Becky's a girl that we grew up with. We've known her since we were little kids,
Sure.
and she said, "Check out her Facebook post." So I looked at it, and she said, "My mom saw a Bigfoot show last night, and she hasn't been able to talk because she had a really bad stroke." She goes, she
Oh,
hasn't been able to talk in a long time, but the Bigfoot show came on, and she won't shut up about Bigfoot now. And so she goes because she said she saw one when she was little. So I was like, oh shit! And I've known Becky, like I said, my whole life. Her mom, her dad, her brother. So I pick up the phone. I call Becky. Hey, what's going on? Tell me about your mom. Is she okay? First of all, right? But Becky told me, she had a bad stroke and she wasn't able to talk. She saw, I think it was Finding Bigfoot came on, and she started telling her that when she was a little girl, that there was a Bigfoot that would come up to the house and look in the windows. Right? I was like, really? And I said, where'd your mom grow up at? Jeremiah. She grew up in Falk.
really?
Yes, and guess what the name of the creek the creature would come out of was called?
No way.
Yeah, Boggy
Wow,
Creek. And I was like, what? And
dude.
she goes, yeah. I said, holy shit. And I started telling her about it. She goes, I didn't know Boggy Creek or Falk was that big of a deal. I said, in the Bigfoot world, it is. Yeah, that was one of the crazy
That's
stories.
awesome, man. That
Yeah,
I love that. I love that.
yeah.
Um, so Pat is Pat told me in the chat, he's like, if I want to share, I can. So at the Van Meter Visitor Festival, which is a cryptid festival we have in Iowa. I was there last year at my booth and I met Pat, who's a cool dude from around the same area, Iowa. And he told me a story that is pretty interesting. So, my apologies, Pat, if I butcher this. I'm going to do my best. So, back in the 90s, him and his buddies were in a gravel pit around Winterset, Iowa, I believe. And all of a sudden, this huge rock gets chucked at their gets chucked at them from the top of the gravel pit. They didn't see a Bigfoot, but man, it was something that had to chuck a huge rock at them that they were not expecting. That was kind of cool too. But
And that's pretty cool. Yeah, we found this big piece of concrete one day in the middle of the forest out in that Alpha area. It's just big solid piece
oh,
of
really?
concrete. Had no idea where it came from. Like, who carries a
Ooh,
piece of concrete out here in the middle of nowhere? Yeah.
that's
It,
wild.
it yeah, it's way back in the woods, and uh, I mean, there's nobody around. There's nobody around it. How they found that out was my friends Walter was a part of a paranormal team, and they heard there was Bigfoot in the San Luis Forest. So they go out to San Luis Forest. Uh, they're at this little bridge where supposedly the activity had taken place, that Bigfoot activity, and this guy rolls up on them in the middle of the night, like at midnight or something like that. It's like, hey, what are you guys doing out here? And they're just like, we're just out here looking around. He goes, I know what you're doing. You're looking for Bigfoot. He says, follow me. I'll take you to where he's at. They followed him, and man, they got scared shitless. I'll tell you that.
Oh, wow.
Walter really had a hard time at first. So when he contacted me, we went out there. I mean, he was white knuckling it all the way down because he was driving.
Mm.
And we got out there. His head was on a swivel. This is in the daytime. We're probably 11, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and his head was on a swivel. He was so scared. But
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And one of the weird things about that is that guy, his voice never came out on any of the recordings.
Really?
Yeah, his voice never came
Oh,
out on any
man.
of the recordings.
I do have this is a fun one I just remembered of. So gentleman came on my show a while back from Oklahoma, and he was sharing some really interesting stories about you know Bigfoot that he's seen down in that area. But he had a story that a hunter had told him from southeast Oklahoma. The gentleman was up in his tree stand, and he was trying to hunt hogs. Um, Pretty much, he's looking at a group of hogs. Out of nowhere, this huge Bigfoot comes running on all fours, gets up to one of the hogs, grabs it, the whole hog by its arms, slams it against the tree, breaks the neck of the Bigfoot, and or the breaks the neck of the hog. And I'm pretty sure how it ended up is slung it over his shoulder, and it was just out of there. The crazy thing is that as it's going away, the Bigfoot turns around and looks right into the eyes of the hunter. And the hunter was like, I didn't get out of that area for hours. I couldn't move out of that tree. So everyone's like, why didn't you take a photo or something? Dude, how can you even breathe if you see something like that? I
Right.
mean, that's literally the wildest thing that I've ever heard on my show.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's Southeast Oklahoma. I don't know what's up with it. Um, I've got a interview coming out on Friday with a gentleman who's got some more Southeast Oklahoma stories, and he's seen some stuff. He's good friends with one of the gentlemen from the siege at Hanobi, and I know I said that wrong.
Yeah.
Apologies, guys.
Yeah.
But
One of the
uh,
Humvees.
yeah, where
Yeah.
the Bigfoot were trying to break into the house, and
Right. Right.
pretty much there's one shaking the gate to the house,
Mhm.
and they end up supposedly taking out the Bigfoot
Right.
with a they were prepared to take him out. And the reason they didn't see a body, that I'm told by the guy, is that 6 other Bigfoot carried this dead one away. The
Right.
crazy thing is that there are multiple witnesses in the same area that supposedly saw 6 Bigfoot carrying away a dead Bigfoot across the road in
Right. Yeah.
Southeast Oklahoma. So hopefully in the future, I may be able to talk to some other gentlemen that were actually involved with that. It's a pretty famous encounter uh, back about 20 years ago now. But yeah, that's coming out this Friday, my chat with that gentleman from Oklahoma. So that'll be awesome.
Yeah. 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 That's pretty cool. Yeah. I talked to one of the brothers. I don't remember which one it was, but it was in private. It wasn't on the show or anything. Yeah. 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 Man, they got a crazy story. And yeah, I heard about. I think it was a truck driver or somebody that saw the Bigfoot run across the road
Oh,
carrying
really?
the other. Yeah. I think that's what it was. I think it was a truck driver.
Mm,
Let's see, Tate. This is for a split second. I thought you were talking about the Ruby Creek incident.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about you yourself? Have you found any evidence, whether it's be footprints or tree breaks or twisted branches?
That's a really good question, Joe. So I actually haven't yet. The most evidence I've gotten would be recorded evidence.
Mm,
So I guess that would be the next step.
right.
Um, is
Well, I think actually
finding a footprint
recordings
or
and
something.
audio is going to be very important in proving their existence anyway. So,
Oh, I mean, that's the thing. Like at the end
yeah,
of our weekend, Tate was like, "You want to you got to realize that this kind of stuff is not normal to happen in a when you go out looking for Bigfoot. Like
right,
this doesn't happen because he wanted me to realize. I think that how special it was, all the stuff that we had happened to us. Um,
right,
you
right.
gotta love it. You absolutely gotta love it. So
Yeah, that's what I
it's
tell
a lot of
everyone.
fun.
Going Bigfoot is like going fishing. You're not always going to catch anything, but the thing I like about Bigfooting is that even if you don't have any activity, you get a campfire and some good people and hopefully some good food.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's the other thing I learned from going out that I'd not realized because I'd never been out looking before is that there's a lot of downtime, so you better have games with you or whatever. There's going to be a lot of chatting around the fire, sharing stories. You got to bring good food with you. So Tate was prepared. He had the burgers ready to go. Um, and bring a guitar or something like that. I know Tate has brought in video games before. Bring something that makes makes the creatures come in and they're curious, right?
right.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point, man.
yeah. One of these areas that I went to, which actually isn't too far from that Alpha area. I went out there with my friend Brandon, and I had a flat. We're out there in the fucking middle of nowhere, and I had a damn
Mhm.
flat. We're trying to
Oh,
change the
man.
tire, and we hear a tree get pushed over, and it's
Really?
pop, 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 pop. And I'm looking, and he's looking towards the sound, and I looked at him. I said, "Was that meant for us?" He goes, "I don't know, but hurry up and put your tire on."
Yeah, let's get the tire on and get out of
Yeah,
here.
but I want to show you this too. This is
Alright.
what I this was in 2019. This was
Oh, interesting.
in a creek.
Let me bring
It was an 8-inch track.
okay.
Yeah, and that's something
Hmm.
that I didn't cast. I didn't have any casting material with me, but
Okay, I was gonna ask you, yeah.
yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting considering how wide it is too for an 8-inch track. I wish I had a little kid with me. They could have put their foot next to it. But,
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah. But
Man,
then, like up in this top area, it almost looks because it was coming out of some bushes. It was a very brushy area, and we
okay.
this particular creek. I love this creek because I actually found a 3-inch track in that creek one day, also, which is crazy. So I always go back to that creek when I go back, and that was probably in 2015 when I found that little track. And so I went back down that creek, and there's this one right there. So that was one of my more interesting, or actually probably the most interesting print I found. I found other prints, but that was probably the clearest print I found.
That's pretty sweet.
Mhm.
That is pretty sweet. So, I'm
Um,
hoping to get back to that area,
mhm.
maybe even this year, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But, it's not well, I'll say it's easy-ish to get to. It's not the hardest thing, so
Right. Yeah.
not the only trip out there for sure, but,
Do you do conferences or anything?
so that's something I'm starting to get into as things get, as Bigfoot Society grows, right? So I've done I go to the Van Meter Visitor Festival every year,
Mhm.
which a few Bigfoot people show up at, which is awesome. But I did present about Iowa Bigfoot in the '70s last year. I was one of the presenters, which was awesome. Um, so I'm there every year. You can, if you want to meet me, just go to that festival. You can meet me September 30th. This year I already mentioned I'm going to Monster Fest as a guest of Seth Breedlove, doing the podcast live there. That'll be awesome. So if you're going to be at Monster Fest, I would love to meet you. Right now, I don't have any plans for any other conferences. I did go to CryptidCon as an attender last year. That was a fun experience. I potentially might do vending. I don't know if you've been to CryptidCon. It's a big,
No.
big conference, man. It's intense. There's a lot of people that show up really quick, and you got to be prepared. But I had a few people come up to me, share their stories, even though I was just walking around. So that was awesome to meet some listeners. See, Burton Moran is in the chat. Good to see you, sir. He's a cool dude. He's got some wild stories. I used to do a call-in show on YouTube Sunday nights. I had to cut that out for now due to time constraints from other stuff. But Burton called in with some wild stuff. Story about the giant owl.
Right.
And so you got to go back and listen to those Bigfoot Society lives, the strange story ones, the one with the owl with Burton Moran. But yeah, check out Burton Moran's YouTube channel. Dude, he's got some cool stuff. And he recorded the VIP tour from Van Meter last year. So if you want to see how cool that is, you can check it out. Oh, geez, are we getting into Bohemian Grove stuff?
What was that?
The guy said Moloch the owl.
Oh, what's on your bucket list, man?
My bucket list?
If you have places to go visit or investigate or research.
That's a good question. So first thing is I would love to go to the NABC, North American Bigfoot Center, out there in Oregon. I would actually love to just check out that whole area. Like, I've been to Portland before with my wife, but that was before Bigfoot. But I would love to go to the NABC. That would be amazing. I've never been to places like Falk, Arkansas. That would be cool. I've been talking so much with people from Oklahoma. I would actually love to check. There's a few places in Southeast Oklahoma that are just wild. And because I've been talking to these people so much, I would love to check it out.
Right.
Area X, I don't know if I could just waltz into there. You kind of got to have a connection. But I mean, there's areas like one of the hot spots in Oklahoma is McGee Creek, where this guy that I was talking to on Bigfoot Society was telling me encounters that he saw, where he actually had face-to-face encounters with Bigfoot at the creek. And then it was weird. He came back the next year and they had put up huge fence out of nowhere. Weird, right? Why would they put up huge fence that was like 10 feet tall? I don't know.
This is from Oklahoma, actually.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. One of my friends sent it to me. Shane from Southern Bigfoot Alliance. Oh, damn.
Yeah. Yours is, let me see yours a little bit. That's awesome. Dude, that's huge.
Yeah.
Is that, so you said that's in Southeast Oklahoma or what part?
Yeah, it was, yeah, it's in Oklahoma. He has it. Their location, they call it Squatch Creek, but I don't know what area that is.
Wow.
Yeah, there were 5 prints total. This is print number 3.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, this is actually, it's from the Cryptozoology Museum in Portland, Maine. You can buy casts there for like really cheap, for $30 because they make them there. So that's one of the Patterson Gimlin.
Okay. Casts. Yeah, it looked familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, dude.
I like that, yeah.
So
have you ever met Gimlin?
I haven't, dude. That would be another bucket list thing. That would be awesome, right? Can you imagine being able to chat with Bob Gimlin?
Oh
That's
yeah. I met him
Did you meet
here in
him?
Texas. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
wow,
He came down for
that'd
the
be
Bigfoot
cool.
convention in Huntsville, which is
Okay,
an hour and a half north of Houston. So I went and he was there, and I got to meet him and talk to him, and
wow.
just as nice
Is he
as
really?
ever. Yeah, just a good nice guy, nice guy.
Bucket list for the podcast. I would love to talk to Bob Gimlin.
Mhm.
I would love to talk to Bobo. That hasn't happened yet. He's hard to get a hold of, and I'd love to talk to Moneymaker too. That would be really cool. But
Yeah.
he's hard to get a hold of as well. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
maybe
well,
someday.
man,
Yeah.
there's no shortage of witnesses, that's for sure,
Oh yeah, dude.
and there's no shortage of stories. When I asked you about some of your favorite stories, one of my favorite stories is Mike Woolley's story. You know,
Mike Woolley.
Mike Woolley, where he talks about he was in Louisiana and he was in his tree stand, his deer stand, and he saw a deer come up right up to his deer stand and was breathing hard and sweating, and he looks up and he sees a one looking out behind a tree, and he thought it was a guy in a costume, and he started yelling at him. You don't
Oh,
remember that story, Mike Woolley? I bet if
sound
you heard it, you would know it.
the name sounds so familiar. I don't think I've talked to him personally.
No, he passed away in 2019,
Oh, then definitely
but he
not.
was
Okay.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. But he was a good dude. I got a chance to talk to him too.
Oh, that's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah, and yeah, he's a really good dude. He actually came here to the Savings the Forest too with the Garretts to go check it out, which is pretty cool.
Mm, good
But
stuff.
yeah,
Good
yeah,
stuff.
that's one of my favorite stories, man. But yeah, man, we're coming up at the end of the hour here, man. Do you want to tell people how to get in touch with you? If they want to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, first off, thanks for spending some time with Joe and myself tonight. Make sure that you are subscribed to Beyond the Woodline and that you share this with all your friends. For myself personally, if you want to hear me chat with people about their Bigfoot encounters or people that are, names you would know within Bigfooting, you can subscribe to the Bigfoot Society podcast. You can find that on places like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Uh, if you have an encounter that you would like to share and potentially be uh, interviewed about on Bigfoot Society, go ahead and send me a message on you can do Instagram at Bigfoot Society. You can send me an email directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. And I would love to chat with you about what you've seen and potentially interview you. But yeah, thanks again for having me on, Joe. This has been a really fun time.
Yeah, yeah, man. It was great having you on, that's for sure. But I like to give my guests too an opportunity to let people know what they're like. What do you do when you're not doing your Bigfoot thing, or you're not doing your podcast? What occupies your time?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm usually, it has something to do with dinosaurs because
Hmm,
my kid is really into dinosaurs. So,
okay.
we're like, I don't know if you so if you have a kid and they're into
Yeah.
dinosaurs, you're gonna have a lot of these dino dig kits, and
Mhm.
they get these chisels, and you can like, you know, get these little plastic T-Rex skeletons out of the clay. We do a lot of that. It's awesome, and we play Switch a lot too. He's into Yoshi, so
Okay.
a lot of stuff with the
Okay.
kid.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. My son is now 24.
Wow.
He's 24, and he still loves dinosaur stuff.
That's
He
awesome.
loved it from the time he was little, and he still loves it. So that's pretty
Awesome.
cool. Yeah. So hopefully your
So
son never outgrows it.
I don't think he is going to. I really don't.
Yeah,
So
man.
we'll see.
Well, cool, man. Like I said, it was great having you on, man, and I appreciate your time. That's for sure. I know time is precious, especially nowadays. So
No
and I
sweat.
appreciate it so much, man. If I can ever do anything for you, promote anything for you, just hit me up, tag me. I'll share it for you too. So
Absolutely.
um, it was great talking to you. And it was great talking to everyone in the chat. So you guys did a great job. Even the trolls, you guys made me laugh a couple times. So I
Dude,
appreciate.
I mean, I've never had so many. This is kind of
Yeah,
like
you know, I only
it's a
blocked one
celebration.
guy because he was
It's
kind
a
of getting
troll
silly.
celebration.
You know, one guy was kind of getting silly, so I blocked him. But these,
Okay.
the trolls here, they were actually kind of keeping me entertained. I was trying to laugh at their crazy ass shit, but they did great too, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for being nice trolls, funny trolls at least.
They were in it to win it, dude.
Yeah, but cool, man. Well, everybody else, Rod really was a tool. Well, he wasn't. He was still fun. But okay. Yeah, man. It was great having you on, and I'm sure we'll talk again sometime in the future.
You
And
got it, man.
yeah, and to all you guys in the chat and that are watching us, good night. You guys be nice and take care of each other.